Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Dahlem Realty Company Podcast, where commercial real estate meets business innovation. Whether you're a seasoned industry professional, an ambitious entrepreneur, or just curious about what drives success in the business world, this is the podcast for you. This month, we have a couple great engaging guests for you. Chris Bowling, he's an Arby's franchise owner and operator, and Dan Pellissier, Vice President of Real Estate for Southpaw Capital, as well as Jim Dahlem, the owner of Dahlem Realty Company. Gentlemen, how we doing?
Well,
doing great.
All right, I've got a litany of questions here. I'm excited to get into this. I'm excited for your all's expertise. So please, if we get into a topic here and you want to just jump in, please do so. Chris, I'm going to start with you. What initially drew you to the Arby's franchisee? What drew you to that world?
Well, it's a long story.
Okay.
I'll shorten it. In 1969, my parents moved to Danville, Kentucky, and my father opened up Burger Queen, which was a franchise that was started in Louisville, Kentucky by George Clark, which was my mother's brother. So there you go. So we started, he started a fast food restaurant, the first one in Danville, Kentucky.
All right.
I worked in them through high school, off and on through college. And then...
so you kind of grew up in it.
Yeah, kind of grew up in it.
Now, you know Jim a little bit, I'm hearing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So you guys go back, Jim?
We go back pretty darn far to the college days.
Okay.
We went to college together, and we were in each other's weddings, and we've been friends since the 80s.
Pretty good connection there. Mm-hmm. All right, Dan, how about you? What drew you to the commercial real estate industry?
So I actually entered the industry kind of by accident.
Okay.
I went to school at UK, got my degree in landscape architecture because for whatever reason I was drawn to that in college, but got a job with a landscape architect out of Nashville, and they actually hired me to open their office in Atlanta.
Okay.
And worked for them for a year just to figure out that I didn't want to be a landscape architect.
Right.
I enjoyed the business side much more than the design side.
Okay.
So I took my second job out of college was with an architecture and development consulting firm, and their biggest customer or client was Home Depot.
Oh, all right.
And I started out drawing shopping center site plans, and I was surrounded by a lot of folks, not only within the company, but within the Home Depot organization, that I think saw my talents outside of design and that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. So I quickly went into the deal management entitlements realm of project management, and really just through that experience and that portion of time within Home Depot's lifespan, they were growing faster than they could possibly imagine. So it was right place, right time.
Yep.
Had the right people around me.
Right.
And I really that gave me the bug.
So it wasn't just Home Depot. You've worked with Target, right?
Yes, we also did some Target development. The vast majority, probably 75% of the work that I did was for Home Depot, but I did do some work with Target. But, starting out my career working as a consultant for two of the biggest, most high profile retailers at the time and possibly even still today.
Sure.
It really gave me a lot of insight and forced me really to learn on the run, and the rest is history.
That's pretty exciting stuff. Okay, so I don't even know, couldn't even pretend to understand kind of how that world works. So this is why I'm so glad to have you guys both on. Can you share some of the lessons that you learned when you're managing developments for brands like Home Depot and Target? Dan, what are some of the things you learned kind of early in your career?
Honestly, probably the biggest takeaway was that location is key.
Location is key, or location is everything?
Well, location is everything. And that's, people joke about location,
right,
but it's very, very true, especially from a retail and even more so a restaurant standpoint.
Yeah.
And really to be forced to understand that and pretty much live your professional life by it is really the biggest thing that I took away from it. Second only to that would be budget and schedule management.
Okay.
Knowing and understanding the importance of managing a project to a budget, and even more importantly, managing it to a schedule, because schedule means sales. And really, those are probably the three biggest takeaways that I came away from that experience with.
All right, so let's go back. So obviously, even a novice knows location is everything. It's kind of one of those terms that is prevalent in the commercial real estate industry. But for both of you guys here, and Jim, please chime in here as well. How do you determine what the right location is? Is there a guess, or are you looking at demographics? Are you looking at trends? What determines the right location?
Well, for us, we've purchased our stores. We've never developed a new one. So
you've never really picked a plot of land and said, "Hey, we're building here"?
No. So what we have done is we've changed. We've moved locations when our lease was up and we wanted to own our own piece of property. We've chosen to move. So we've had to do that, but we stay within that small geographic area. What we like to do is stay around everybody else. We like to be next to Taco Bell. We like to be next to McDonald's. We like to be next to everybody. And you don't want to be out on your own.
That's what they call agglomeration, I believe, in the business, where everybody wants to huddle together so that when the customer comes there, if they see a line, they have choices.
Right.
Or if they and so or they go up there and say, "Oh, wait a minute. I've been to Arby's for the past 2 times this week. There's Taco Bell. I think I'll go to Taco Bell to switch it up," or vice versa.
And on top of that, or to add to that, really, overall synergy, where, if you understand who your customer is, by way of observation, by way of sales data, by way of demographics, where they shop, and where they're going on a multiple times a week basis. And so if you're trying to draw that customer into, whether it's an Arby's or a Taco Bell or what have you, you want to position yourself where it's most convenient to the customer. And so understanding the customer, in my opinion, is just as important as the selection of real estate.
How do you do that, though? Is there data? Are you studying data on that?
Yeah, they're especially nowadays, technology is actually somewhat scary.
Right. That's a good point.
Spooky.
With cell phone data and everything else. There are a lot of services out there that can tell you by customer demographic and even break it down within the demographic of the phase in life that they're in or what have you. They can predict by way of where that customer has gone in the past, where they're going to go in the future.
Yeah, it's a really good point. My business in the marketing world, we deal with apps and social media a lot, and Facebook in particular follows you around. So we deal in the golf industry, and let's say you're trying to do some promotion for a certain golf club. Well, we know if you've been on a golf club or on a golf course in the past week. We know if that's a private course or a public course. So we kind of can understand the trends. So I guess that's what you're getting at there, Dan. Yep. I mean, the customer data really drives that.
Exactly.
And they can actually, there's software out there that can track the customers and where they've come from. It's come from a residential area. Well, that must have been their home. And so they go here and, they go over here all the time. So that's where they work.
Wow.
Okay. And now then they leave. Well, where did they go after that? And when they went to Taco Bell or to Arby's, where did they go before that, and where did they go after that? So that is all out there.
And it even goes deeper than that. When they set that up, it's called geofencing.
Sure.
And so they take your cell phone data that every time you download an app, you may not know it, but you're consenting to giving them that data.
Right.
They can even tell us as a customer whether or not that person went through the drive-through or whether they parked and got out of the car and went into the restaurant. So now we can predict to a certain degree of accuracy whether or not our drive-through traffic is going to be higher at a certain location or whether our dine-in traffic might be higher. And so that leads us to make decisions on how big of a dining room we build or how big of a drive-through stack we're going to need. And so it's, the data and the technology is just one piece of it. I always look at site selection as kind of a conglomeration of many, many data points. And one of which being just boots on the ground knowledge,
Right.
standing on a site and looking
Right.
around and watching traffic flows. So there's a lot that goes into it, but technology is certainly helping.
Have you guys ever gotten into the beacon world? I know that got really hot at one point where you were putting beacons inside locations, so like inside stores, and then actually see where customers are going within that store. Are they using the restroom? Do they spend more time on this side of the restaurant as opposed to that side? Have you guys gotten into that at all?
No.
I have not, but that is actually something that I could see a brand like Taco Bell corporate doing as a way to maximize their store planning efforts.
Yeah.
So that, they're putting the restrooms in the right locations, or they're formatting the dining room in the most
Right.
economical way. So, but personally I haven't.
That's interesting. Wait, okay. And then, so Dan, how about like a Home Depot or a Target? I've been to some smaller areas, some smaller towns that have some of these big box stores, and I'm kind of surprised to see a Home Depot at, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is there not a number of constituents that have to live within a certain radius, or how does that work?
So, and mind you, I'm taking this from back in the early 2000s.
Got it.
And I guarantee that their metrics have
That's changed quite a bit.
But back then the brand was still growing.
Okay.
At least in terms of Home Depot. And at that time, we being Home Depot, we were trying to stay ahead of Lowe's, who was right on our tail because they were a startup a handful of years after Home Depot.
Okay.
And so, we were trying to get into markets that had no home improvement retailer. And at that time, we were still developing in what I would call, smaller primary markets or even some larger secondary markets. One of the hardest projects I did was down in West Palm, Florida. And if you look at West Palm today, you never would have thought that at some point in time there was never a Home Depot there.
Yeah, for sure.
So, there are always those population metrics that have to be taken into account. Frankly, today I don't know what those would be, but I think any big box brand right now they're kind of in infill mode. They've staked their claim on the major points in every market that they want to be in, and now they're trying to find the voids in those markets that their customers are moving into.
Yep.
But which means they're moving out of the primary trade areas in the market. So now they're trying to chase their customers a little bit, and ultimately stay convenient.
Yeah, makes sense. All right, Chris, question for you. I'm fascinated on the Arby's side of things. I love Arby's, by the way, one of my favorites.
Thank you.
Why Arby's? So you said Burger Queen, and I don't know if there's a tie there or not.
No,
but
there is.
because Arby's, there's so many different. I'm sure it doesn't have to be Arby's, right?
Well, I kind of fell into it, and I fell into it in that when I got out of college, I had the opportunity to get back into the fast food restaurant, and I said I didn't want to do that. I wanted to go off and do something else, and so that's where I went into public finance work.
Okay.
And worked here in Kentucky doing tax exempt bond financing of libraries and schools and hospitals and county facilities and so forth. So I did that for 20 years while my father was still involved with what became Burger Queen, then became Druthers, and then what happened after that, Druthers kind of dissolved, and Dairy Queen came in and bought all the assets.
Okay.
Basically, they bought all the sites around Kentucky, Tennessee, and so forth.
Okay.
Kentucky, Tennessee, Florida. And so at that point, it was in the mid-'80s, my father and his partner decided to expand into Arby's.
Gotcha.
And so at that point, they were in the Lexington market, they were in Danville, they were in the Louisville market, and I was just off doing public finance work for 20 years. And then in 06, 07, a couple franchisees decided that they were putting their stores on the market. And so my father and his partner were looking at acquiring those, and I became involved as a silent partner.
Got it.
The partner died.
So not so silent anymore.
Yeah, the partner died about a year later. So, I was very lucky in that I worked with a gentleman that runs our our locations and does all the operations. And he worked with me because my father's, he was in his late 60s, early 70s. And so the two of us, kind of took them on and started running them. And I slowly, over 10 years, worked my way out of public finance over into the Arby's world. It just took 10 years.
So I'm going a little bit off script here, but I've got some questions I want to ask both of you here.
Into it.
So fell into it, and so and Dan, you've got a Taco Bell connection, correct?
Correct. So the company that I work for, Southpaw, we're primarily a Taco Bell franchisee. However, we started off as a Dunkin' Donuts franchisee,
Which is now part of the Inspire image with
Correct.
Arby's.
Correct.
It's interesting.
Funny how things work.
All right.
And so our company was started, I think, about 12 years ago by a husband and wife team who at the time were not husband and wife. They were just friends.
Okay.
They
Work colleagues, probably.
They both came from big finance backgrounds. He worked for Goldman, and his now wife Erica worked for Deutsche Bank.
Okay.
They both lived in New York City. Were kind of, in my opinion, they were probably living the big finance dream. And then number of things happened, and they found themselves wanting to make a change in life. And
Gotcha.
And so they, to the best of my knowledge, they had a couple friends in common that decided, hey, you guys are a lot alike, but just different enough that we think you all should meet. You'd be great friends. And so they kind of began this business journey that started off with a handful of Dunkin' Donuts locations.
Okay.
Judd Wishnow, our CEO, he loves all things fast food. And so he had always wanted to be in some kind of a fast food environment on the ownership side. And so they started off with a handful of Dunkins and had I think always wanted to get into Taco Bell. That was at a point in time where Taco Bell was really taking off. They were innovating more than any other brand. And so they took a stab at it and bought, I believe, 2 locations up in like mid upstate New York.
Okay.
They didn't know what they didn't know, and Judd tells me the story all the time. But they learned a lot from that experience, and they showed Taco Bell that although they may have failed on that first effort, that they were serious, and that if given the right opportunities, they could really put something together that could be successful.
And how do you fail? And Chris, this is for you too. Like, how do you fail at this? Because you're not necessarily, you guys aren't dictating the menus, right? I mean, this is all coming from a corporate. But how do you fail? Is it just the wrong location? Is it just not ran correctly? How do you fail?
I think failure in QSR is operations more than anything else.
Yes.
And on the flip side, success is operations more than anything else.
Yes.
So
Location's a big part of it. I mean, that's going to keep you above the water, below the water. But what ultimately drives your success is the operations. It's your general manager, it's your staffing, it's your district managers that run the store. I think that you're exactly right there. And when you own multiple locations, we have 17, and if you have 17 locations, you're always going to have issues at 1 or 2. You have construction, road construction. You have new competition. You have staff turnover. You may have a store that has a lot of turnover for one year or so, and so you're always going to have that issues that you're going to deal with. So if you're not and we look at it as, I'm amazed that they can run 150 stores. I'm always amazed because you're seeing that now with Arby's. When I got involved with Arby's in 2007, the average franchisee had 2 stores. That was it.
Okay.
I mean, we were 17, so we're huge,
right?
I mean, compared to
right.
2 stores. And since then, we're small. Now it's, you see franchises that have, 150 Taco Bells, they'll have Dunkin' Donuts, they'll have 3 or 4 brands together. And so we're starting to see that in the market. And what I tend to worry about is that if I can't touch the store, then it can become an issue. So my operations director, my partner, Lynn Taylor, if he and I can't be in those stores within a couple hours, to see those stores, to drive by those stores, to be in the communities, then it's easy to lose focus on what's happening in that community. And then the store can get away from you pretty quickly. And once it gets away, in terms of bad operations or a bad name or bad service, it takes some time to bring it back.
Have you ever gone through the drive-through and just ordered as a customer just to see how you're treated? And had an experience you either loved or didn't love?
Most of them don't know me. Most of them know me as the HVAC man or the tech man.
Gotcha. but I'm serious though, Chris. Have you ever just gone in as a customer just to test your restaurant out?
No, that's what our district managers.
I mean, that seems like that would be the fun part to do, the undercover boss. Come on, Dan.
So I will do that a couple times a month when I'm out in market visits with our operations team.
Got it.
And mostly I just sit back and kind of watch how they do it.
Right.
And really, they don't do anything special. All they do is go through the drive-through like a customer and make sure that, the time is what they expect.
Everybody's friendly. Sure.
Everybody's friendly.
Yeah.
The product you get is accurate and hot.
Right.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it happens all the time.
I figured it had to.
Now, my favorite, I have a story on that. So I'm in charge of all the technology in the stores. And so if something happens with the registers or the drive-through headsets or firewalls and so forth, I'll get calls. And I received a call one day from one of our stores, and they were having trouble with the drive-through registers, a credit card machine, which happens. And so I was on the phone, and they had 3 or 4 cars lined up in the drive-through. I said, just give the customer the food. Just give them the food. Tell them that we're sorry our credit card machine's not working, and come visit us again. And I hear this. She pulls the phone away, or he pulls the phone away and says, the tech guy's telling me to give the food away. Should I do it?
Is that okay?
And I was like, yeah, just give the food away.
Oh, that's great, Chris. Jim, why don't you set the table here on kind of your relationship between Dahlem with Chris and Dan?
Yeah, sure. Well, Dan and I, we were talking about this just right before we started this podcast. When he moved to Louisville, I met him over at the Building Industry Association, used to be the Home Builders Association, when he was in another life at that point in time. And since that time, we've known each other through the International Council of Shopping Centers. And as he has journeyed his way around the Horn in different capacities, and we've just always gotten along and been able to trade different ideas, and we've done a deal with them down in Louisville here on Lower Brownsboro Road, where we actually helped broker a deal for them to get into a site that's mainly a drive-through with how many seats?
I believe it has 8.
Okay, 8 seats inside there. Yeah,
Small.
Yeah,
yeah.
That's right.
And then with Chris, as we touched on earlier, I've known him since college days. And one day he and I were talking on the phone. I don't know if you remember this, Chris, or not, but we were talking on the phone, and he was saying, I've got to go negotiate this lease, and I hate doing this stuff. This is not what I do, and I'm just terrible at it. And I said, well, we do this for a living.
Yeah, that's kind of what I do, Chris.
And I said, is there any way that I can help you? And he said, well, yeah, maybe. And so we got into it and started having a conversation, and we went in and helped to negotiate his lease out. And then since then, we've been helping Chris do his real estate stuff. Yeah. So
I've always had that red line of, I don't like to do business with friends.
I know, and I do too.
So we had that. So when you brought that, I'm like, well, maybe I can just cross that line once.
Yeah,
and I do the same thing too, because you never know what's going to happen.
But y'all have helped us. We've had some, buying existing locations, where we've had some issues is where we have state road construction.
Mm-hmm.
They're redoing the roads, and they're changing the routes, or they're changing the main way that traffic flows. And so we had 2 locations back in 2012-13, based on the long-range plan. All the traffic was going on the other side of the interstate. So we had to start thinking about, okay, when's the lease up? When is the lease up? When's our license up? And what are we going to do? And so we had to start thinking about where we'll move. And of course, what I like about the commercial real estate market, and especially with the franchise market, is I like owning our own property.
Oh, yeah.
Because QSR is cyclical.
Yep.
And the thing I like is owning as much property as we can. So, we kind of have a general rule of thumb now. If we're going to remodel, we're going to look to, and for leasing, we're going to look to see if we can stay within that area and buy a piece of property.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to ask you this here in a little bit here, Chris, on kind of what advice you would have for someone that is inspiring to own their own restaurant, whatever it may look like. So I would assume that might be a piece of it. So Dan, you just mentioned something that I'm very curious about. So 8 seats within a Taco Bell almost seems pointless in a way. Is this where the world's going? Is this where fast food industry?
To a degree. So the number of seats in that dining room were primarily driven by 2 things. One, it was an exceptionally small site. So it's probably, if not the smallest building that certainly we have built that still has a dining room.
Okay.
And that was just as a function of having to fit on the site. Secondly was in that part of town and in other parts of markets where they may not be as secure as other areas, we don't necessarily want to encourage a lot of eat-in traffic because people end up loitering. You run into a lot of issues that you still want to offer that dining room, but you don't want to make it so big and comfortable that you invite issues and challenges onto yourself.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Wow, that's a great answer.
May I hit on something else? I got to ask you guys both a question on this with the shrinking sites and that, because Chris, during COVID, you and I were having conversations that you were spending people through the drive-through like crazy and making more money going through the drive-through than what you had before COVID.
Well, I think what we saw is before COVID, which was probably 60-40, 60% drive-through, 40% inside, and then during COVID, of course, it's 100%, and then, of course, you're running it usually with not as many employees, so that does help a little bit. But then after COVID, it's stayed at 70-30. It's maybe even 80-20 in some places too.
Even to this day.
Mm-hmm.
So wouldn't you say that's kind of a trend of, okay, let's change our prototype and let's have a more of a drive-through presence and shrink the size of our buildings? Is that agree?
Well, yes, and one of the stores that you helped, that site that we bought in Corbin,
yep.
The previous site had an atrium on it and it had probably 70-80 seats in it. The new one we built has 30 seats. So I think you're seeing, what we like to see is Saturdays or Sundays for church crowds. Maybe after a ball game, you'll have some people. If we're in small towns in Kentucky, you want a place for them to come gather, but 30 is probably tops.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
Yeah. But it was 70, 75, 80.
And I think it depends too on the brand.
Yes.
So I was director of real estate for Zaxby's for a handful of years, and that's a brand that over the years the dining room has shrunk. But they had stores that had 90-seat dining rooms, and you would talk to the operator, and he would tell you every Sunday after church that dining room's full. Mm-hmm. And so no way would they consider shrinking that dining room or shrinking a dining room on another site, because that brand was in smaller towns, mm-hmm. and it was kind of, it had positioned itself as kind of the go out to dinner destination mm-hmm. for a lot of folks in that town. Mm-hmm. So, a brand like that, I think I believe today their smallest dining room is like a 30 or 40 seat.
Got it.
But Taco Bell, for instance, it's all about speed and convenience.
Yeah.
So you may have
and being open after midnight.
And so you may have a number of folks that use the dining room primarily at lunchtime as kind of a break in the day.
Yeah.
But it's for the Taco Bell brand, it's just, and after COVID, our business has stayed very, very consistent at somewhere around 85% drive-through.
Really?
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we noticed we have stores along the interstate, along 75, and so our stores along the interstate, there's not a lot of eat-in. They're stopping, they're using the restroom, they're stretching their legs, they'll get their car, they'll get their food, and off they go. And now with the app, they'll order ahead, they'll come in and pick it up and leave. Our stores in our smaller communities, a Danville or a Paris or a Campbellsville, we'll still have to keep 40 seats, 30, 40 seats, because you have those crowds that come in after a ball game, after a meeting, or for church.
Mhm.
So it's but still a drive-through is key, and I think all the metrics that the QSRs are working toward is how to make that drive-through faster, because if you're 6-7 minute cars, that's put that into 60 minutes, that's all you can do.
Right.
It's like Subway. You
Right.
only get so many people through that line.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, while we're talking about prototypes, one thing that I found to be very interesting, usually franchisors are pretty rigid about the way that they want to do their prototype. And once they decide that's the prototype, that's what you're going to do, right?
Mm-hmm.
Dan, you all did something very unique here in Louisville. You renovated a bank.
We did.
So did we.
Did you?
Yeah, that's the one in Corbin.
That's right. We did do that one. They renovated it. They kept the vault in there.
We got rid of the vault.
You got rid of the vault, but you kept the vault in there, didn't you?
We did. I think we just drywalled it in.
Okay.
Did you really?
Oh yeah. It was cheaper than trying to take it
Someone
out.
wanted ours.
So it's very unique. I think that both of y'all were actually able to step out of the prototype world and say, this is what we want to do, and convince the franchisor that this was the way to go. How did you do that?
So for us, that has only come as a benefit of being a franchisee that has proven themselves to the brand. And so we've back in the earlier days, we absolutely had to adhere by the prototype standards. But because we've had success in thinking outside the box and turning that abstract thinking into increased sales and profitability, which means increased royalties to the brand and overall a better image of the brand, we've been able to garner some favor with Taco Bell and really be given probably much more leeway than a lot of other franchises.
And I think as long as you stay with there's probably 4 or 5 major touch points that you've got to adhere to. Color, certain things you've got to do with signage and so forth. The inside's the inside.
Right.
It may be structured a little bit differently, but it's all going to look the same. But Dan's right. If you're a newer franchisee, you're going to have to adhere to very strict standards. I think you get a little more leeway if you can show that you run successful stores, you run good operations, and you do the right thing.
Being successful and running successful franchisees, do you guys have any say at corporate? Do you guys get to put any input in of what the future looks like?
So at present time, we have a little bit. And I wouldn't say that is, I wouldn't classify it as we have say in what goes on at corporate. We're very fortunate that Judd Wishnow, our CEO, is an extremely talented guy. He's very charismatic. People can't help but love him. Mm-hmm. And so when you combine that with the success that he has built in our business, he's really helped position us into a position of, I wouldn't say influence, but when we speak, people listen.
Right.
And so I will never say that we always get what we want, but we've been fortunate to get the ear of a lot of key decision makers at the brand, and we've been able to make some changes, not only from a property and a restaurant standpoint, but from an operational standpoint that we can say, hey, look, we know that the standard is this way, but we've been doing it this way for a year, and here are the metrics that show that we're actually doing a great job.
Right.
And they may or may not choose to implement it. Yeah. But at least we put ourselves in a great position.
Chris, any experience there?
Well, Arby's is a little bit different from the Taco Bells and the other franchisees in that back in I'll be wrong on some of this, but back in the 60s, Arby's had a hard time, and I think they were going belly up. And at that point, the franchisees stepped in and saved Arby's. Now, this was back in the 60s or maybe the early 70s. Obviously, I don't remember any of that. But so now that organization is still in place. So so the franchisees has a board of directors. And that board of directors then works with Arby's corporate to work on menu items, pillars that we're going to run throughout the year. So yes, the franchisees have a say, but still corporate kind of drives the boat there. But we get a say through our leadership with the franchisees. Now co-ops also, there's all co-ops in all these different areas. So you'll have like the Louisville co-op or the Lexington co-op or Central Kentucky co-op. And those co-ops can run some different types of promotions or specials or things like that. And so again, if it's a co-op that has a good relationship with corporate and they've shown that they've done a good job promoting their issues, then corporate will listen to them and maybe
makes sense.
Those. So I see it through corporate too. Yeah.
Well, Jim hit on this a little bit, but I'm curious, how else did COVID affect how you guys run your industry in the fast food industry? Did it well, obviously, okay, so we've talked about how the percentage of drive-thrus it's much more prominent. Has there been anything else that COVID affected, and how have you guys adjusted?
Like you said, it really highlighted the importance of having a drive-through. But I think on a global scale, it really highlighted from an operations standpoint who the leaders were and everyone else. Because although, fast food was drive-through only, you could tell just by looking at a restaurant from the street, almost if it was operated well.
Really?
Just by, how long the backup was in the drive-through. Now, there were backups everywhere because that was the only way to get your food. But I think that the customer experience during that time, having only one touch point with the restaurant, if the restaurant didn't have or if the chain didn't have their operations house in order, they were forced to do so. Mm-hmm. And so I think that you did have a lot of smaller concepts probably not make it through COVID for that reason. But, just from our experience, we were able to identify really quickly what our opportunities were. Mm-hmm. And, we were able to act really quickly and make those changes. And a lot of those changes still persist today because it's just good business.
I think one thing that's changed for us is technology because of the labor shortage we incurred after COVID. That's just the part of that business with the unemployment rate being so low, and they could leave us and walk across the street and go work for Taco Bell, or walk across the street and go work for McDonald's, or work up to of course we had kids that graduate and move on to other things. So the more technology we can invest in, and that's where Arby's really worked with the franchisees starting in probably 2018. So we kind of got lucky that we were already implementing those changes prior to COVID. We were on that path. And so it helps the managers to really not have to, they can manage, they can work with their people, they can work with their crews, and instead of having to turn the lights off at night, turn the lights on in the morning. We have systems now that will do that automatically, and we can manage it through a portal. Same for HVAC, same for all that stuff. So we're able to kind of take some of that off of the crews and the management so they can then focus on the customer and focus on themselves in training, instead of having to deal with what's wrong with the air conditioner today, what's wrong with the cooler, why is the cooler not working, So we get those notifications. We can see everything in the store from a computer. We can see equipment, how it's running. We can see temperatures. We can see HVAC issues. If it's short cycling, we can see, drive-throughs. We can monitor drive-through times. Mm-hmm. One of the things that, I don't know if Taco Bell does this, but we have HME as our drive-through timers, and they allow us to, they have a leaderboard. So all of our stores compete against each other to see who's winning. So we'll run competitions throughout the month. If who can be the best in getting their cars under 6 minutes, and if you can do that during lunch or do that for a week or two, then we have those competitions.
Yeah, we have a similar system at maybe HME.
Yeah, something like that.
But we do very similar things. And to Chris's point, if COVID did one thing, it highlighted just the essential being of technology.
Yes.
And how, whether it's in the drive-through or managing a building or managing schedules, because you have to manage them down to the nth degree because you've got 80% of the employees you had a week ago.
That's right.
And so, I think that was probably the biggest thing.
Yeah.
As you guys are talking, I'm coming up with all kinds of different questions here. I'm getting a little off script, but some of this is fascinating to me. Explain to me the dual drive-through concept. Now, I don't.
Taco Bell.
It's
not us.
Is it actually? Well, listen. It seems like a lot of the restaurants are going to it, and then you have the Chick-fil-A concept where you got the people outside now, and they're actually face-to-face ordering. I'm assuming this is innovating. This is doing things different. How do you guys decide what works and what doesn't?
So I'm trying to think. We only have a handful of restaurants that have a dual order point drive-through, and I think that a lot of that comes down to just best site layout, size of a site, and Taco Bell hasn't necessarily pushed that on us, which is fine. At Zaxby's, when I left, we were just getting into implementing the Y merge through, and I mean, I understand it. It allows.
Is it faster?
So you can take 2 orders at once, and so you're taking twice as many orders within the same period of time. Sure. Now, what that does is it forces your kitchen and everyone else on the operations staff to fulfill twice as many orders at the same time
and not get it to the wrong car.
Right. So it is a, and I'm not on the operations side, but just kind of from the outside looking in, I've got to assume that there's a lot of training that has to go into that.
Got it.
And, from our business standpoint, it's kind of one of those things like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Well, and in our position, we have these existing sites and existing locations. And so unless we shrink the building size or if we do a scrape and rebuild, then it's possible to consider something like that. But most of the time when we do a remodel, we're just remodeling the footprint of the building. So we don't really have a chance to add a drive.
And that makes perfect sense. Yeah. What about apps? It seems like people are using that to order their food more and more now. I mean, it's just weird to me to drive up to a drive-through and say, I've ordered through the app. Although my wife does it constantly at Chick-fil-A now. I don't think she orders any other way. But is that the future?
I think so. Taco Bell uses it not only as a convenience factor, but also it encourages loyalty, and truthfully, it allows whatever brand uses whatever app, it allows them to best track their customers' behavior, because they know exactly what you've ordered every time you've ordered it on the app.
Or if you haven't been for a while,
right?
They can offer you a coupon.
Right.
Yeah, send you a push.
For us, that's all done out of corporate. It's not done. We can't do that as a franchisee. So corporate manages that for the app, and so they'll.
And there are a lot of spin-off companies that have come across. I can't recall the names of them, but they have their own apps that tie into existing QSR loyalty apps that allow those QSR customers to earn benefits at other retailers by being a member. It's called Upside.
Upside, yeah.
And you see them on TV all the time.
Yeah.
But
big with gas too.
Yes.
So the other thing that's interesting to me in this fast food world, and Jim, please jump in here at any point.
Well, I was just going to talk about the app thing, driving down the highway, making sure that I hit the right store and I didn't hit the one behind me. Yeah,
I've done that. Paid at the wrong store. Yep, been there, done that.
Well, and I think what we're seeing now with of course, the knock on QSR is that of course, the prices have gone up. Of course, everybody's been hit with the inflation bug. And so what we see now, I think, with the app is a lot of the brands are competing against each other. And so you're seeing the younger generation picking and choosing who has the best special that day. So I see the app in some way. I agree with you. It allows for loyalty. It allows us to promote loyalty, but in some way it allows for you to pick and choose who's got the best deal for that afternoon.
Is that something you're changing though, Chris? I mean, is that from an Arby standpoint? Are you guys doing different deals on a daily basis?
Well, I think all the QSRs do deals. They can do it per customer, they can do it per region, but then they'll run specials throughout the deal. But if you're a customer, you'll say, "Oh, spend $10 and you get $5 for free."
Mm-hmm.
Or, I tell the story of, I think my son, he's in college, and the group decided they could get like 50 McNuggets for $2.
Mm-hmm.
How they did it, but they did it through the app.
Okay.
So they're all just shopping the app.
Yeah,
got the best deal
that
on
makes
the
sense.
app that day.
Well, and one thing too, Taco Bell, Taco Bell's new ordering system, they have a functionality where when you pull up to the order point in the drive-thru, if you have your app on, the drive-thru screen knows that you have your app on. It can tell who you are by the fact that you have your app on. It will automatically research your last handful of orders, and it will give you suggestions for what you might want to order.
Holy smokes.
So, I mean, it's amazing.
Yeah, that's the future for sure.
Yeah.
All right, one more question on the meal side here, and Chris, I want to ask you about the Arby's menu here in a second, but influencer meals, that's been a big thing. I know you mentioned Zaxby's. I know my son and I went way out of our way to go to a Zaxby's to get the Mr. Beast big box meal, right? Because it was because it's his favorite meal. We went there to go get that. Is that something that's going to be? I mean, it seems like it's becoming more and more prevalent.
Well, who did the SpongeBob?
Yeah,
special?
there was a SpongeBob special somewhere
too.
Yeah,
It's a
can't
special
remember
sauce for Patrick's special sauce or something like that.
Yeah, I remember that, but I can't remember who it was.
I can't answer that because I'm not on social media.
Well, does Arby's do much of that?
Oh, sure, they do a lot of the social media. I think that's what helped Arby's at first because they would joke around, make fun of themselves. Mm-hmm. They were on social media a lot. In fact, that's what turned us around probably in 2016 or 17 when Rourke bought Arby's and took them in-house, and they went back to the basics of we have the meats. I mean, that's probably the best campaign Arby's has seen.
Mm-hmm.
But then Arby's started to really get active on social media and engage with influencers, or
Right.
I think they even sponsored a pro golfer at one point. So,
Yep,
but
that's true.
that's right.
That's true.
Right.
That's true. Dan, do you see the influencer meals becoming more and more prevalent?
I think so. I can't think of anything that Taco Bell has done specifically,
Mm-hmm.
but just my experience at interacting with Taco Bell corporate and the franchise conventions that we've gone to, Taco Bell has done a phenomenal job of positioning itself at the top of the social media food chain when it comes to QSRs.
Yep.
So
You're right there when that you're right there in that generation too, with the younger generation.
Oh, yeah.
20 to 30s.
yeah.
I mean, that's perfect.
Absolutely. And it's funny when you look at, the Taco Bell leadership team, they're all starting to get younger. And
Oh, yeah.
it's,
That's because we're getting older.
well, probably. And it's just a great example of leaning into a trend and not trying to fight the uphill battle. It's because at the end of the day, that's the future.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
it or not.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
All right, Chris, let's talk about this Arby's menu here for a second, because obviously it's evolved from roast beef and French fries to burgers, now fish and chicken. Gosh, there was a Wagyu burger. I mean, there was all kinds of different things going on there.
How do you get to touch your mic and it not mess around? But
I'm a professional, Chris.
Quit touching the mic.
What was your question?
My question is the menu, because obviously Arby's has changed. Really, now it's always been roast beef, and that's what you think of when you think of
has.
Arby's. But there's so much more that's offered there now.
Gosh, you're asking me really hard.
When you've gotten out of the curly fries, I mean, there's still curly
Well,
fries, but now you can get
crinkle
all
fries, yeah.
different kinds of fries.
So I think Arby's, when we got involved in 2007, was probably coming off a peak, and then they went through a downturn, in my opinion. They kind of lost their way in how they were marketing, and the customer base was getting older. And so when they went back to the basics of we have the meats and focusing on those types of sandwiches, that really resonated with customers. And from there, yes, they've branched out into the Wagyu burgers. And again, the same thing, it's the meats. The burgers, the briskets, things like that.
Yep. Turkey.
And
Turkey, fish.
And so, and what like any QSR, they run them as limited time only. And they'll run them for 2 or 3 months and take them off, and then they'll bring them back. So you've got that core menu of your roast beef, your beef and cheddars, your super, but still, you're going to bring back those specialty items, on a limited time basis.
What's your favorite as a franchisee?
A roast beef sandwich and a Jamocha shake.
Well, you just got to stay classic there, right?
When I retire, we're going to take an old Jamocha, old shake machine and put it in the house.
I like that. That's great. So, Dan, I'm curious. Tell us about the Green Lane concept and its unique drive-through only salad and wrap concept. What makes that stand out in such a crowded market?
Sure. So that's a new to market concept. There's no one else like it in the QSR world. It was developed by Erica Wishnow and her partner Chris Kern about 2 or 3 years ago. They brought on partners Chris Birch and Rob Gronkowski. Actually.
Oh, okay, all right.
And
Erica's the husband. I mean, the wife of the
correct.
Your boss.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So they did all kinds of market research and determined that Tampa, Florida, was the perfect market for a concept like this. So. It's a very simply drive-through only, salads, wraps, smoothies, but we also have really good cookies and pretzel bites and stuff like that. It's phenomenal. The idea was to come into the traditional QSR market and really upend it and be really a disruptor in the market. Fast food doesn't have to be horrible for you.
I was going to get that. No. This seems like a much healthier option.
It is. So it's healthier. It's budget conscious. You walk into a lot of these salad restaurants these days and you're not walking out for under $20.
Amen. You go to Panera or somewhere like that, it's unbelievably expensive.
Yeah. So at Green Lane, the average ticket today is $13.
Wow.
And that I believe that includes a drink.
Okay.
It's every salad and wrap recipe is it's all seasonally determined. Everything is made fresh. Even salad dressings only sit around for about 2 days or so. They're all made in-house. A lot of when Erica and Chris first started the brand, they were looking at potentially partnering with local farmers to bring in local produce and that kind of thing. That's maybe something that could happen down the road as we scale. But in the past 18 months, we've opened 3 restaurants in the Tampa market.
Okay. So just Tampa right now.
Just Tampa right now. And we've got another 2 in development that are going to open this year, and probably another 2 on top of that later on in the year. So by the end of this year, we will have more than doubled our store count.
Nice.
And so that the long range goal is to grow the Tampa market over the next handful of years to somewhere around 12 or 15 restaurants. And then we're actually already looking at expanding into Orlando.
Okay.
So it's the building has an exceptionally special design. It's very colorful. It looks like nothing else in the QSR segment. To say that it pops out at you is an understatement. It's not all about the food. It's about giving the customer a value conscious feeling of luxury. Most folks when they're coming into a QSR or going through a drive-through, they're not expecting to get something that looks like a homemade salad or a homemade wrap that's very fresh, and that's what they get. And we've really seen a phenomenal reception of the brand in the Tampa market, and there's already buzz in Orlando about it, and it's been really fun to be able to work with Erica and her team in rolling out the Green Lane concept. working on Taco Bell is great. Everybody loves Taco Bell. It's a whole different level of enjoyment when you're helping a great team create something phenomenal.
Yeah, I'm pumped up. I want to try some Green Lane, man. You sold that really well just then, Dan. Sounds awesome. That's great. All right, guys, we've kept you here long enough. So let's wrap this up. From an advice standpoint, what advice would you give someone looking to get started kind of in this commercial real estate sector that you guys are in?
So I would say if you're looking to get into it and it interests you, you have to have a passion about it. And the one thing that I would say is that coming into it as a young associate, you need to be ready to grind. It's funny because I look back and I've been doing this, for almost 23 years, and it's crazy to even say that. But I look back to my early days, and it was hard, and it's still hard. But what I always say to people is, I absolutely love what I do. I've always loved it, and it makes those hard days just fine, because that's just part of the job. Another thing I'd say is that if you're younger and you're coming into the industry, make connections, learn from those connections. One of the biggest things that I did early on was, find a couple of veteran folks and just kind of eat a piece of humble pie and say, hey, I really need a mentor. And that has helped me greater than I could ever imagine.
Yeah.
And I'm still friends with those guys to this day. And then, if you're making those connections, maintain those connections as you go through your career. Because commercial real estate it's a big industry, but it's not that big. It's kind of like Louisville. You've only got a couple degrees of separation from one person to the next. So, you never know who could pop up on your radar one day and, help you get your next deal done.
It's a relationship business. I think it's exactly what it is, because through Dan's career, he's hit different places during his career. A lot of times, as we said in our previous podcasts, somebody may jump somewhere else to another location, into another company, and you still know them, and you might have an opportunity for them there, and you didn't have an opportunity with them over here.
Exactly.
It's just and so you do keep in contact with all these people.
Yeah, and listen, and you dropped some serious knowledge. The mentor thing, I think, is incredible, because that's one of those things where you even said you have to eat a little bit of humble pie. A lot of these kids, per se, a lot of these guys that are in college right now, it's not really something they're interested in doing. Okay, there's some cockiness to them. But you're so right. If you can find somebody that's been established, been there, done that, man, that can really change your career path.
Well, and there have been two gentlemen that have kind of served as that for me over the years. And one gentleman, his name's Jim McCarthy. When I first met him, I'd been working on Home Depot stuff for, 6 months. And he was, at the time, I always felt like he was so much older than I was, but he's not that much older than I was. But he was a director of real estate. Actually, no, he was a real estate manager. And he and I just got along. Okay. So it kind of started off as a friendship.
Right.
And then really quickly I realized, oh my gosh, like I can learn so much from this guy. And oddly enough, became very, very close with him. And when we moved to Louisville and I left that job, he said, look, you're doing phenomenal things. You need to meet this guy in Louisville, because he's who your next mentor needs to be. And I met Mark Bleeden.
Okay.
And Mark and I, he has been a mentor to a degree, but we're phenomenal friends.
Right.
And now I'm great friends with his son. And so, his son has come to me and asked me for advice.
That's awesome.
And so it's just funny how all that works, but I mean, it's cheesy, but everything happens for a reason.
Oh yeah.
So it's essential.
All right, Chris, Dan's dropped some serious knowledge here. It's your turn.
He's dropped a lot of knowledge.
So what advice would you give?
Oh gosh, I would. The mentor's important. Relationships, keeping those relationships. even if you have disagreements, and that's something that everybody's got to learn today. I think getting your hands dirty. If you're going to get into this business, commercial real estate, learn. Even if you start in the middle or you come in at a mid-level job, it's important to go back and learn what some of the basics are. And so for example, if I go into a store, the lot needs picking up, I'm picking up the lot. The bathrooms need cleaning, you're cleaning the bathrooms. So there's nothing that you shouldn't be able to do or want to do, especially in the fast food restaurant, because at some point you'll have to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Chris, that's pretty awesome when you say that. There's a story, and maybe you guys know if this is true or not. There's a gentleman in town by the name of Junior Bridgman, basketball player. I'm sure you guys know well. He's been very successful with the Wendy's franchisee. So he apparently worked in the off season in the restaurants to learn it. He worked at the counter, swept the parking lots, and now is one of the biggest franchisees of Wendy's, I guess, in the country. But I think that you've got to, and honestly, that builds respect among the other employees because you're in there doing the same thing they're doing.
It does.
Yep, for sure. Yeah, we've done the same thing when in the office business. The toilet's clogged. Well, guess what? I'm not going to call my maintenance man and get him to come off where he is to do what needs to be done when I can go in there and get the plunger and plunge it and just go ahead and take care of business. It's just you just gotta do it.
Well, that was the same way when I was in public finance. It was kind of like investment banking for tax exempt bonds, and I can remember you've got your sales. You see your sales folks that are out there trying to get hired and get the client to hire you, and then you've got a group that sits in the office and crunches the numbers, puts together the presentations, and I can remember that. And I started off in the office crunching the numbers and doing the presentations. Initially, went into sales. And I can remember the sales guy was like, "Now, how are those numbers calculated? Or how did we do this? What's PowerPoint?"
Right.
So I think that's important to learn all that.
Yeah.
Because you lose respect of your colleagues.
Yeah. Makes sense. Jim, anything else for our guests before we get out of here?
I don't think so. I think you guys have pretty well hit it out of the park, and I really
completely agree.
Guys coming in here and talking to us about your all's business and your careers, and it's been a really interesting dive into your all's world.
Chris, Dan, thank you guys so much for being here.
Thanks.
And thank you for listening to the Dahlem Realty Company podcast. Each episode, we're trying to bring you insights from top leaders, visionaries, and decision makers shaping the landscape of real estate and beyond. So from navigating market trends to sharing untold stories of triumph, our goal is to inspire, educate, and empower. So once again, thank you for listening to our podcast, and we'll bring you another engaging guest next month.